Aloha! Good Thursday morning, Malaysia. It is back on air with you. We're now in the second hour of Tracks Momentum, and today's interview feature, as you all know it, is face-to-face. We can be heard live on TRAXXfm over the airwaves, or else you can also watch us live via our official YouTube channel, or also TRAXXfm official's Facebook page. Now, let me give you a brief introduction of what we're going to talk about. You know, for some of us, the heat wave might sound like an excuse for us to run around with a hose and sprinklers and just soak up in the sun and have a great time, which includes people like me, because I just love the sun. But in reality, though, the heat wave is not something that we should be taking any lightly. You see, because there are two versions of hot. There is hot, the regular hot, and then there's hot, like the real hot, where you just want to run away from the sun. And I've experienced that. I've experienced that in no other place but in KL, in Malaysia itself, which is something we've all been experiencing. And we've got an expert on the phone line who's going to give us a better picture on why this is happening, the reason behind this phenomenon, and how we can keep ourselves safe from it. And I have on the phone lines Mr. Mohan Kumar Sammathuria, who is the Chief Assistant Director at the Atmospheric Science and Cloud Seeding Division of the Malaysian Meteorological Department. Mr. Mohan, good morning.
Good morning, Anil.
How are you today?
I'm fine, Anil.
Have you been enjoying the sun since this morning? We're going to talk about the sun. You know, the sun is something that we all can't live without. You know, plants photosynthesize with the plant, with the heat, right? And, you know, we get a lot of vitamin D from the heat as well. But sometimes when it gets a bit overwhelming, that's when it gets a bit uncomfortable, yeah?
Exactly.
So, Mr. Mohan, just to start things off, can you tell us what are the things we can expect weather-wise in the coming days in the country?
Okay, to answer, give an indirect answer first. I mean, rather than going into what we can expect in the future, I think just to lay the situation of what's happening now, I think we all know that, as Anil pointed out earlier, that, you know, generally we are having some hot and dry days now. So at times it's a situation that we are not comfortable with, as opposed to, but this is not predominant over the entire of Malaysia. Okay. It is more, generally we do feel, the heat generally over Malaysia, but it is much more severe in certain locations, certain regions of Malaysia. Okay. More specifically, it's in the northwestern side of Peninsular Malaysia, with Perlis and Kedah taking the brunt of it. Right. So if you look at the number of one of the chief factors here is actually the reduction in days of rainfall. That means the longer the period goes without rainfall, we expect the temperatures there should be hot to be actually of higher temperatures in those regions. So if you look at the states of Perlis and Kedah, there are quite a number of stations there which have recorded rainfall for more than 14 days going without rainfall. And in Perlis, you have even places where there has not been rainfall for over a month now. Wow. And if you look at places like Penang, Perak and Pahang, which are the other areas of focus with regard to this this additional heat we are facing, we have started getting some reprieve over the last 1 week, which means there was some rainfall coming into these areas over the last 1 week. So these areas previously were much more hotter, to say, but now it is actually getting some reprieve. Okay. Now, how do I go into the... Go ahead, Anil. Go ahead.
I was just curious because you were explaining about these things, and I think I want to give our listeners a perspective, maybe a very brief sort of scientific approach. How is it that heat waves actually form, Mr. Mohan? Is there a culprit behind this phenomenon?
Okay. Now, basically... first to take the climate change out of this. It's not something directly due to climate change, because it's climate change, that means you would expect this maybe in 5 years once, and all this. But this is a factor that happens on an annual basis. So which means during the month of February and March especially, in the regions mentioned earlier especially, you will definitely get surface temperatures of 35 and above and all that. Now the reason being, first, as I mentioned earlier, was reduced number of rainfall. Reduced amount of rainfall. So then the reason for the reduced amount of rainfall now is a meteorological phenomenon which we call divergence in the upper level wind now. That is too scientific a term. Basically,
divergence in the upper level of wind. Sorry. Okay.
Exactly. Basically, it means at the height of 5,000 to 7,000 feet, the winds now over the western coast of peninsula especially, they diverge. So when they diverge, what happens is that the moisture in these regions now becomes reduced at that height.
Right.
So when the moisture at that regions get reduced, you actually get less cloud development.
Wow.
Okay, and less cloud development gets you less rainfall. Now, this is the overlying factor. So there are two additional factors there. Okay, and there's one additional factor there, which is the geography of the region itself.
Okay.
So if you look at the areas of eastern Perlis and eastern Kedah, now this sits, and of course the eastern part of Perak and the interior of Pahang on the western side. Now this sits between the main range, the Banjaran Titiwangsa.
Yes.
And on this side you have the Banjaran Bintang and all this.
Okay.
So which means now, this is an area now that is enclaved between two high mountain ranges. Now when this happens, okay, with the wind pattern above, especially, so what with the wind patterns at the 5,000, 7,000 feet earlier, there is a compression of air that happens in these locations.
Right.
Okay, so when the air gets compressed in these particular locations, so it gets more hot now. Because when you compress air, automatically we know it gets heated up. As opposed to an area that is not enclaved actually between two mountain ranges.
I see.
So that is why on an annual basis, these are the areas which first will register now the higher heat reading. And the third factor this year now is we are actually having an El Nino going on now.
I see.
Okay, which peaked in the month of December. Still relatively much high in January. Slowly now it's reducing in its intensity. And we expect the El Nino now to be present maybe up to the round of March. The reduced intensity maybe as of April, but after that we expect the El Nino now to actually go into a neutral phase and later the La Nina.
El Nino and then La Nina right after that.
Exactly. So these are the three factors occurring at present. Okay, now come March and April, automatically two of the factors are going to go off. The wind pattern at the 5,000 feet and the 7,000 feet over this region is going to change. The divergence pattern won't be there. There will be more moisture. Secondly, the El Nino intensity is going to reduce and migrate to a phase which we call the neutral phase and later the La Nina phase.
Okay, Mr. Mohan, just to interrupt you there, we're just going to jump in for a quick break. We're going to jump in for a quick break, and then when we come back, we shall resume with our discussion right here on Face to Face. For those of you who just tuned in, I'm today speaking to Mr. Mohan Kumar Simmadri. He is the Chief Assistant Director at the Atmospheric Science and Cloud Seeding Division of the Malaysian Meteorological Department, and today we're talking about the heat wave. Keep it right here on Face to Face, Tracks Momentum. Welcome back. This is Tracks Momentum. It's face to face with me, Anil, on the mic, and on the phone lines with me today I have Mr. Mohan Kumar Sammathuria, the Chief Assistant Director at the Atmospheric Science and Cloud Seeding Division at the Malaysian Meteorological Department. Mr. Mohan, welcome back to Face to Face.
Thank you, Ali.
Now, Mr. Mohan, we understand, based on what you explained, and as a direct unavoidable consequence of global warming, we're experiencing the heat wave. You gave us a picture on which region in the peninsula are affected most due to this heat wave. Now, could you give us a picture and let us know if this is typical of what we're experiencing in Malaysia right now?
Okay, this is typical, Anil. It's an annual occurrence, actually.
Okay.
The only difference here will be the El Nino intensity.
Right.
So, which means that if you look at the last 3 years, 2020, 21, 22, you would not have, the El Nino was not there.
Okay.
So 21 and 22, you actually are even the La Nina there. So basically, so this year is the El Nino. So that's the additional factor, and that is why we are having some, the intensity is a bit higher this year. The good part is this will not persist. So we expect the situation to die down as of the end of March, and early April onwards, we expect the situation to drastically die down, actually.
Now, Mr. Mohan, I'm very keen to understand the impact this heat wave might have, because people living in urban areas might not understand how this heat wave may affect people who are living in rural areas, and maybe Malaysia has first-hand experience. You would see how this is impact. So give us a picture, maybe briefly, Mr. Mohan, on how do you think the heat wave affects people living in urban areas as opposed to people living in rural areas. How does it affect their day-to-day life going on? Okay,
it's a good question here, actually. Okay, before going to, before answering that, now I think we need to understand with regard to the heat wave. There are different levels of it.
Okay.
So this falls entirely under the gambit of the Malaysian Meteorological Department. Okay, coming under the field of meteorology. So basically, at the Meteorology Department, we break it into 3 categories. Okay, the first category is what we call the heat wave watch category. Okay, which means, what does it mean technically is that the maximum temperature in a particular location, okay, is less than 35 degrees Celsius. Okay. Now, then you go to the the level 1 category, which we call as where the heat wave category already. Okay, so at this level 1, the heat wave is already categorized, physically present. Now, so technically what this means is that the maximum temperature in any location, or the maximum daily temperature consecutively for 3 days. These are important parameters. Consecutively for 3 days, maximum daily temperature is somewhere between 35 to 37, not exceeding 37.
Okay, let me just stop you there, just to clarify. So once it goes beyond the threshold of 35 to 37, consistently for 3 days, so that's when you classify.
Yes, that means that we have already categorized, and heat wave is occurring over that particular region.
Right.
That location. Then the other, and the final one will be where we categorize the heat wave as being extreme. So, in this case now, what happens here is now whereby your maximum temperatures now are actually more than, you can go easily more than 40 degrees.
Wow.
Okay? So, basically, so when it's more than 40 degrees, and this is seldom, okay, you rarely hit this, but it's not as it has never happened, it has happened before. But if this happens, then the conditions or the steps to be taken both at the agencies level and especially at the individual level, that will differ. So when we look at the watch category, for example, whereby we actually don't expect now the maximum temperatures now to, it is what you call this. We don't expect it to be more than 37, for example. Exactly. So what happens there now is that you, as opposed, if it is an urban setup, and whereby now there's less greenery, for example, the tendency for the heat now to accumulate in certain closed up positions is definitely higher as opposed to a rural setup. So in the rural setup, generally the tendency for the heat now to actually go and get caught in a particularly small location now is less. So in an urban setup, when this happens, this is where the risk now happens. The risk is greater because, let's say now we are actually carting, or we are actually taking someone who is aged, or children, or young children of the younger age.
Right.
Now, whom are actually more sensitive to actually these higher temperatures.
Right.
So what will happen there now is that, so this is where now, we have had, unfortunately, 1 or 2 cases where the children have been left in the car, for example.
Yes.
Exactly. So now, if this were, let's say, occurred in the month of December, or let's say even May, that situation will be so bad. So these are things that the public now must keep in mind. You are not in a situation where your temperatures are at normal. Especially during the times of 10 o'clock to around 2 o'clock or say 2:30. Now, why around this time? Because actually the highest temperatures for Malaysia is roughly, approximately a period around 12 to 2. More specifically, actually 1 to 2.
I can agree with that because I finished my show at 2 o'clock, Mr. Mohan, and my car is actually parked outside under the heat. And yesterday, 2 days ago, when I got out and I got into my car, I lowered my windows down, and I have this habit of putting my hands out, and I got burnt because the car, the outer layer of the car just accumulated so much heat. Yeah.
Right. So this is one thing. Because it's not an occurrence throughout the year, so naturally our habits is, we are not used to this sort of heat.
Okay.
But especially when, just to repeat again, especially if we are having children and people of the aged category with us, then I think additional care or additional awareness must be there on our side. And I think, the thing is nowadays we don't naturally, most of us do not work in a situation where we are exposed to the sun.
Yeah.
We are actually in the buildings and all that. But so what we can do always is make sure we always have some water. Of course, it's very trivial, this
to stay
suggestion, but it
hydrated
makes
all
a
the
lot of
time.
difference.
To stay hydrated all the time.
Exactly.
And Mr. Mohan, would it be possible for you to let us know when can we definitively see an end to the heat wave and start seeing some, bit chill weather?
Okay. The direct answer to this will be, I would expect somewhere around early April.
Early April, okay.
Yes. We would expect around early April because 2 reasons. One, the El Nino, now the intensity will be reducing. 2, we'll expect some rains to be coming in. And very importantly, what we would like the public to actually look at is under the department, we have one specific page dedicated to monitoring of the heat wave, and it mentions to you of the 3 different categories.
Okay.
So if we go under the Malaysian Meteorological Department website, there is a section called Pencherapan, which means monitoring. So if you go there, then there is a subsection called drought or kemarau.
Okay.
So if you go and you click there, then there's something known as status cuaca panas, or which means the status of the present heat. And there is one beautiful diagram there which actually tells you what is the situation for the whole of Peninsula and Sabah Sarawak.
Wow. Okay.
In what category you are. So this is something we would actually suggest the public to actually look at it on a daily basis, especially during this period.
Okay. Wow, Mr. Mohan, you really enlightened me. Now I realize. So essentially, a heat wave is nothing but trapped heat.
Exactly. Trapped heat. And there must be, first of all, something to actually form the heat there. So 2 things.
And then it gets trapped. It doesn't have no place to go. And then we get caught in the fiasco, the heat fiasco.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much for shedding light on that, Mr. Mohan. Mr. Mohan, we'll jump in for another quick break. When we come back, we'll try to find out in detail from you on what is being done to minimize the impact of the heat wave, yeah?
Okay, thank you.
All right. I'm today speaking to Mr. Mohan Kumar Simadri. He's the Chief Assistant Director at the Atmospheric Science and Cloud Seeding Division of the Malaysian Meteorological Department. We'll jump in for a quick break, and when we come back, Face to Face will resume. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to Face to Face. I'm Anil on the mic, and with me on the phone lines is Mr. Mohan Kumar Sammathuria. He's the Chief Assistant Director at the Atmospheric Science and Cloud Seeding Division of the Malaysian Meteorological Department. Mr. Mohan, welcome back to Face to Face.
Thank you, Anil.
Now, Mr. Mohan, let's talk about the impacts of a heat wave. You know, one of the most common things we hear about a heat wave is, you know, people suffering from heat strokes, you know, heat exhaustion, and all these kinds of things can occur. And, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I can possibly think of two aspects of the impact. One is, you know, the geographical impact, and the other thing is the impact that it can have physically on us as human beings. So talk to us on what is being done to minimize the impact. Any words of advice that you have for our listeners, apart from staying hydrated and also leaving their kids in the car, which is something that's a definite no-no, especially during the heat wave. Your thoughts, Mr. Mohan?
Okay. Firstly, I think now we got to access ourselves. Anil, can you hear me, Anil?
Yes, Mr. Mohan, go ahead. Sure.
Okay, good. So first thing I think is now we got to be aware of what the situation that is presenting itself. Mm-hmm. So like what I suggested earlier, okay, please have a look at the particular web page to know actually in which type of temperature zone we are.
Yes, okay.
First. Okay. Secondly, what the department also does is that on an actively, it actually keeps the government agencies informed. So specifically here, the Malaysian Health Ministry and the Malaysian Education Ministry, because this is where now the bulk of the situations with regard to heat-related aspects we actually face. So so they have, first of all, they have their own inputs on how to actually go about facing the heat stress situation.
Okay.
One, they have their own general inputs, and two, based on the inputs that are given on a periodical basis from the Malaysian Meteorological Department, there may be some amendments or new warnings or new suggestions that are actually uploaded onto their websites. And these are all also, this is actually now also available to it is definitely available to the public.
Okay.
Two, and at the state agencies, though I think so at the state agencies, if anyone is possible, the state agencies will also have their arms, their wings to actually now to pass on this information to the public. That is on one. Another side is that when we look at the sort of prolonged dry conditions and all that, there will be situations where the dam levels may become less.
Yeah.
Okay, so if in these situations when the dam level becomes less, then automatically now it impacts on the water supply to the houses.
Yes.
So, foreseeing this, what happens is that if a particular situation in a dam now becomes too critical or is in the process of becoming critical, there's always an avenue for the state governments now to request at the national level to actually to do operations such as cloud seeding operations.
Yeah.
To actually mitigate to a certain extent.
I want to interrupt you there. You touched on cloud seeding, which is something that I've been fascinated about. Just briefly tell us how is cloud seeding done, Mr. Mohan?
Okay. Basically, it is actually the whole idea now is to increase the amount of rain.
Right.
That's all.
Okay.
Okay, which means now if there's no clouds there, you're not going to get any cloud seeding. You have to have clouds in the first place.
I see. So that's a prerequisite. Right. Okay.
So now when there are already clouds, there is a technology now, because when there is cloud, it does not mean that it's going to rain. See, all water droplets here, due to the gravitational process, it is supposed to come down. But there are also frictional forces in the atmosphere now which prevents it from reaching the ground.
I see.
So only water that reaches the ground is what we consider as rain.
Oh.
So now the whole idea of cloud seeding is now to increase the amount of water vapor that becomes water droplets and become rain. Now, how do they do that? Is we add some a particular sort of particle called the cloud condensation nuclei. Now, it's a technical term, but basically it means cloud condensation. The word condensation now, it means conversion of water vapor to water droplets.
Water droplets.
Exactly. So that's what it is. Now, how do you do it? The most common item that we use is salt, natural salt. So we break into fine salt, and actually we mix it up, with some amount of water,
Right.
And actually we spray the salt water, which comes out in vapor form at around a height of around 5,000 feet into the clouds. And that does two things. One, it makes the condensation process faster, and two, it actually creates a zone whereby now the water vapor can actually now coagulate faster, and there's an additional amount of rainfall occurring over that area.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow. You took us 5,000 feet above ground level, Mr. Mohan. Now we know. Now it's great. It's great. You gave us a picture. Now our listeners and myself, now we know that this is what cloud seeding is. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohan. I had such an enlightening conversation with you. I learned so much from you today. Before I let you go, is there any final words that you have for our listeners, Mr. Mohan?
Okay. Basically, just whatever said and done, this is not going to last.
Okay.
We only expect this for the next month or so.
Until early April.
Because, yeah, exactly. Actually, until early April. And because the main precursors for this, both the weather situations predominantly are actually changing.
Okay.
So whatever said and done, take all care, especially if you're having children and elderly people with you. Be aware of that. And if there's an opportunity to reduce some activities, where we get exposed to the sun, okay, then we can actually, if we can do so. If it's unavoidable, okay, no problem. But at least we do it with being aware of the situation. And that's what I mentioned again. Please have a look at the page that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Because that specifically tells you in what sort of temperature zone you are in.
Yeah, just to give our listeners a cue once again. So to get updates on that, they can visit the Met Malaysia's website at met.gov.my. And then there's a category called Pencerapan, and then under that, there's another subsection called Drought or Kemarau, yeah? So there's like sort of a topological map that gives an indication on the heat patterns that we can expect to see, yeah?
Exactly.
Mr. Mohan Kumar, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person because I've always been fascinated by the weatherman and the weather lady when they come on air at 4:30 every day to give us a picture of what the weather has in store for us. And you have a lovely day, and thank you very much for giving us all those insights for us to stay safe from the heat wave, and you stay safe as well from the heat wave, sir.
Thank you, Anil.
You're welcome. Have a good day, Mr. Mohan. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, that was Mr. Mohan Kumar Sammathuria, the Chief Assistant Director at the Atmospheric Science and Cloud Seeding Division at the Malaysian Meteorological Department. And today we understood what a heat wave is and the things that we can do as Malaysians for us to stay safe and not get impacted by some of the harsh realities of experiencing the heat wave. Time on the clock right now is 48 minutes past 11 o'clock. Coming up, we've got the 12 o'clock news bulletin. And then right after that, Anil on the mic will be seeing you for the third hour of Tracks Momentum. Don't go anywhere.